Good evening. And welcome to the Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting of September 16th, 2019. My name is Councilor Paul McPherson. I'll be your chair for this evening's committee. I'd like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given. And if assistance is required, please see the clerk, Trish, right here in front of me. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, the Town of Lincoln Committee and Council meetings are posted on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, so you can review any of our committee meetings there. I'd like to thank the public for attending this evening, and I just want to remind everyone of our rules of engagement, to please be respectful while others are speaking, and to please refrain from clapping or cheering or anything of that nature. Delegations will have 5 minutes to speak and are asked to stay focused on the agenda item. And I would ask also that you please silence all cellular devices. Roll call, we have a full complement of council this evening. We also have staff here to support the planning and economic development, as well as our Director of Community Services, Shannon, is here as well. Any declarations of interest? Councilor Reimer.
Thank you, Councilor McPherson. Under the regular agenda, item 8.1, PD-63-19, the zoning application by Dennis Skinner. I'm declaring interest in that. He's a friend of mine.
Thank you. Any others? All clear? Okay. We'll start with our statutory public meetings. We have 2 public meetings this evening. So the purpose of a public meeting is to receive comments from the public and consider questions regarding the zoning bylaw amendment application by Adrian and Elvira, I'm going to say Rodier. Is that correct? And the zoning bylaw amendment application by 2410002 Ontario, Inc. Please be advised, Section 3412 of the Planning Act requires that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must ensure that sufficient information and material is available to understand generally the proposal being considered, and council must hold at least one public hearing for the purpose of giving the public an opportunity to make representations regarding the proposed amendment. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Lincoln before the application is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Town Council to the local planning appeal tribunal. Personal information is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and may be contained in an appendix to a staff report published in the meeting agenda, delegation list, and/or the minutes of the public meeting and made part of the public record. The Town of Lincoln collects this information in order to make informed decisions on the relevant issues and to notify interested parties of council's decisions. It may also be used to serve notice of a local planning appeal tribunal hearing. Names and addresses contained in submitted correspondence and other information will be available to the public unless the individual expressly requests the town to remove their personal information. The disclosure of this information is governed by the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, RSO 1990, CM 56. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the application, and council will take any comments received into account in their consideration of these items. There is an attendance list by the door, which we would ask all present to sign if they wish to be notified of council's decision. Members of the public are reminded to give their name and address when they speak. If approved by council, a notice of the items passing will be circulated with an appeal period. Our first public hearing is for the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application by Adrian and Elvira Rodier. At this point, are there any persons present this evening to address the zoning bylaw amendment application by Adrian and Elvira Rodier? Seeing none, I am I'm calling for a second time for anyone to approach council and speak to the public meeting item. I'm calling for the third and final time for anyone to come forward and speak to the public meeting item. As there are no speakers, I declare this public hearing to address the zoning bylaw amendment application by Adrian and Elvira Rodier closed. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, there being no further discussion, we have a motion. The council approves zoning bylaw amendment application PLZ ATU 201-90120 in the name of Adrian and Elvira Rodier. Council enact and pass zoning bylaw attached as Appendix B of Planning and Development Department Report PD-59-19 to amend the zoning regulations for lands at 4568 Martin Road, subject to the following conditions. A, that the owner enters into a temporary use agreement with the town to ensure that the dwelling is removed or converted back into a non-residential use upon expiry of the temporary use bylaw. B, that a cash deposit or letter of credit in the amount of $5,000 be submitted to the town to ensure that the above agreement is complied with. And C, that the temporary use bylaw not be presented to council until the conditions above have been complied with. Council deemed that zoning bylaw conforms to the official plan for the town of Lincoln. We will require a mover for the motion. Councilor Rajima? All in favor? All opposed? And that is carried. Council considered all the written and oral submissions and agrees with the planning report analysis and recommendations and finds that, subject to the conditions of approval, this application meets the Planning Act criteria, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and complies with the growth plan, the Niagara Region official plan, and the town official plan. Our second public hearing is for the purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application by 241-0002 Ontario, Inc. We have one delegation registered this evening with respect to this public hearing. Please note that each delegation may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Stephanie Mertich, on behalf of MHBC Planning, Urban Design, and Landscape Architecture, will be speaking to PD-60-19 zoning bylaw amendment application by 241-0002 Ontario, Inc. Ms. Mertich, and I hope I've got that right.
You did. Good evening.
Very good.
Members of council and staff and the public. So we're here tonight on behalf of Lozani Homes for an application, zoning bylaw amendment. We've been working with staff throughout the applications for the Vista Ridge plan of subdivision, as well as the various multiple block site plans and other applications over the last couple of years. So this is a zoning bylaw amendment in support of one of the site plan blocks, which I'll get into in a minute. So I'll provide a brief overview and background of the application and then happy to answer any questions. So this is an overall plan of the subdivision. So the block that we're here to speak to tonight is in the top left corner, the multiple residential block, specifically a smaller portion of that block, which I will show you in a moment. So the purpose of the application is to rezone the northern portion, which is known as Block 67, from RD to RM 125, which is the zone that applies to the multiple block in question. And this will allow the facilitation of the development of the multiple block as a whole for 21 street townhouses, and I will provide the site plan in just a moment. The Block 67 easement lands were recently acquired by Lozani Homes, and they are now looking to add these lands to the remainder of the block. The zoning for the block overall was approved as part of the original plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications. So this application is technical in nature. So the northern portion here in orange is the portion of the block that we are looking, it's Block 67, and the application seeks to rezone these lands from RD to RM 125. The remainder of the block shown in yellow is already zoned RM 125, and again, that was done as part of the original zoning bylaw amendment as part of the plan of subdivision applications. So this, as I mentioned before, is the overall site plan. So where we are in the process right now is a site plan application has been submitted and is currently under review by staff. The proposal, again, is for 21 townhouse units. It has an internal road, you can see, with 2 access points onto Connor Drive and 8 associated visitor parking spaces. There are 6 on the north and 2 on the south. So the Block 67 lands in the orange, from a technical perspective, do contain 1 residential unit, 4 parking spaces, and a portion of that internal road. So again, the intent of the application is for the entire block to be zoned as RM 125, and the intent is to allow for this development to proceed. This is just from our previous council presentations that we've done on this subdivision, some similar slides that just show what the proposed unit types may look like. They will be more modern in style. So two-story towns and then 3-story dual fronting towns, which will front onto Connor. And this is just a conceptual rendering that we had previously prepared and presented to council as part of the original zoning bylaw amendment application. So just some example images here. So again, in summary, the RM 125 zone, which applies to the remainder of the block, permits the proposed development that you see here. The application is technical in nature and seeks to rezone the Block 67 lands to correspond to the Block 118 lands. And this will allow for the orderly development of the entire block, Block 118 and Block 67 as a whole, to facilitate the multiple dwelling unit form that you see here. In summary, the proposed amendments conform to the official plan and maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw that was approved as part of the plan of subdivision and the original application. And happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from council? Councillor Michalak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter. Just, I'm not sure if this is the right time to be asking this question in this process, but is there provisions for sidewalks within this development?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the overall plan of subdivision, yes, there are sidewalks provided, and I'll just pull the site plan block back up here. There is a sidewalk proposed here along Connor Drive along the front, and then the internal road access is in behind.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because the one image did not show a sidewalk, and that one, and I wasn't able to see clearly the sketch. Thank you.
Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If we just stay on this image that you have, can you explain the 3-dimensional elements of this, of that image? The white buildings versus the buildings that come on and off of Connor Drive?
Sure. So again, it's just a concept that we had previously prepared as part of the original application. The intent is the white buildings that you see in the back are similar to what's existing in the surrounding neighborhood. And then this image that we have done shows the 2-story product at the rear of the site, which is intended to be compatible with the remainder of the neighborhood. And then fronting along Connor, you see the slightly higher, the 3-story units fronting onto Connor. And there are height provisions in the zoning bylaw that are met with this concept.
So if I were one of the people that lived in those white cottages, I should understand that the buildings in front of me or to the side of me or behind me, some of them are 3 stories, the ones facing Connor, and the ones to the rear of that are 2 stories.
That's correct, and that's what was approved as part of the original zoning bylaw amendment application.
Okay. The image that you have there, through you, Mr. Chairman, should we also understand that this is essentially that these are renderings and this is what these buildings should look like when they're completed? The facades will be the same as what you are showing here, that there will be stone and other materials of the type that you're showing here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the elevations here I can confirm they are conceptual in nature. However, they are working currently on their elevations through the site plan process, and they are proposed to be modern elevations very similar to what you see here.
So are these similar to what is under construction now?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, through you, is there anything that we need to know or understand about the drainage of any of this property in terms of the original approvals that we provided?
I can confirm that through the site plan process, that there were detailed engineering drawings that have been prepared and supported by staff.
I'm sorry, you said that you were working on them?
They've been submitted and supported by staff as part of the site plan application process.
Okay. You're not aware that there have been any changes or any issues, any problems that the neighbors should be aware of?
No, all of the engineering with relates to this block has been addressed and approved by staff at this
Okay.
point.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Pachariva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the presenter. A couple questions with respect to Connor Drive. So we've got three-story townhouse concept. Garages will be at the rear? Because it's showing the three-story dual-front townhouse fronting onto Connor Drive. So that shows the garages at the front, yet the conceptual drawing doesn't have any garages, so I'm assuming they're at the rear, on the internal road.
That's correct, yes. So if you look at this image here, that you can see that their driveway, or the garages and the driveways are not proposed fronting onto Connor.
Okay,
The image here at the bottom, that is technically the rear of the unit type, so the driveways
Okay.
and the garages will be accessed from the
okay,
rear.
because the units on the bottom are similar to the ones right now on Cassandra. So I like the fact that it's in the back. Now, following up on Councillor Mikulák's question, so there's a sidewalk on Connor Drive, but there's not a sidewalk proposed for the internal units? Or is there?
Sorry, I'm just looking at the site plan here. in
No
more
worries.
detail. I believe that's correct, yes. We've shown a 1.5 meter municipal sidewalk along Connor and then not along the internal roadway.
Okay, but keeping with the fact that this neighborhood's going to be connected, going to be walkable, there should be something to connect those internal units rather than having the residents walk on the road. And again, and a question following, so to the, I guess, to the south, it's identified as future lane. So is that a catwalk? And if it is, that would be a perfect connection to Connor and those internal units.
Understood the comment. That's something we can look at. We are working through the site plan process, so it's a comment that we can consider. And I do believe that the future lane there is intended to be a walkway connection to the south there.
Okay, so that would make perfect sense to have an internal connection to that future walkway. So thank you very much.
So I see no further questions from council, so I'm going to need a little bit more clarification on the question that Councillor Pachariva asked. So if you go back to the three-story, so you show us two different types of three-story. That one, and go to the other slide, no? Right there. So you've got a three-story townhouse concept there that has garages in the front that looks pretty nice in my opinion. And then you also show a concept that is garages in the back. So is that to be decided yet, or what are you doing?
So I can speak to that. So again, these are just concept designs, and the reason we put these in the presentation is just these are the images that were originally presented to council, but now that we have worked through the site plan process, I can confirm that the units shown here with the driveways and garages at the rear is what is proposed and what has been put forward as a site plan application, with the intention being that there are no driveways and garages then accessing onto Connor Drive.
So those folks that are sitting in the two-story will now face, go back to that, will now face that bottom diagram in their front yard, like in facing them. This will be what they look at. Is that true?
That's correct. Across the internal access road, this is what would be on the other side of the internal roadway, yes.
Okay. Clarified. Any further questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this time, are there any other persons present this evening to address the zoning bylaw amendment application by 2410002 Ontario, Inc.? Please approach the podium and come forward, state your name and address, and spell your surname for the record. I'm calling for a second time for anyone to approach council and speak to the public meeting item. Calling for a third and final time for anyone to come forward and speak to the public meeting item. As there are no more speakers, I declare this public hearing to address the zoning bylaw amendment application by 2410002 Ontario, Inc. closed. Any other questions from council? Councilor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in reference to the map on one of the slides, it looks like the actual Block 118 is cutting off the backyards of the land on the neighbors to the west. Again, I'm just not sure if that's a true depiction or, and it's basically running into, or pretty close to that one house on the southwest portion. Is that a true depiction, or is it just?
Over to planning. Mr. Bruder?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, I think it's just the way the sketch looks, but at the end of the day, no, it won't be cutting through anybody's backyard or anything like that.
All good? All good. Okay, thank you. So there being no further discussion, we have a motion. That council approves zoning bylaw amendment application PLZ BA 201-90145 in the name of 241002 Ontario Limited. And that council enact and pass zoning bylaw attached as Appendix B of Planning and Development Department Report PD-60-19 to rezone Block 67 30M-380 to a RM1-25 zone. And that council deem that zoning bylaw conforms to the official plan for the town of Lincoln. We will require a mover for the motion. Councilor Reimer, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Council considered all the written and oral submissions and agrees with the planning report and analysis and recommendation and finds that, subject to the conditions of approval, this application meets the Planning Act criteria, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and complies with the growth plan, the Niagara Region official plan, and the town official plan. We now move to delegations. We have no other registered delegations this evening. Move to presentations. We have two presentations this evening. Please note that presenters may speak for a maximum of 10 minutes. You have a presentation by Dino Meal and Francia L. Salazar on behalf of Spark Lincoln regarding agricultural hackathon. Our Economic Development Officer, Paul Deaney, will provide some opening remarks. Please come forward all.
Good evening, Chair, through you to the committee. I'm pleased to be up here this evening to talk about this wonderful initiative that the Town of Lincoln Economic Development Department will be partnering with Spark Lincoln about this, Niagara's first ever agricultural hackathon. So I will be turning over to them and saying something at the end. But at the end of the day, as Council will recall, our economic development strategy that Council approved in the fall of 2018 did talk about the importance of agriculture and the importance of technology and innovation. So the idea behind this partnership is to bring the two together. So as I'd mentioned, I will have some comments at the end, but at this point I welcome Dino and Francia. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. Just a reminder for folks that are new, April 23rd, 2018, we opened our doors thanks to the support of this town. The town of Lincoln allowed us to get a great place on Mountain Road, and we've been busy, low-key beavers there ever since. We ignited innovation on that date, and in October 18th, we're going to be sparking ideas for agriculture and other opportunities. Just to give you a little bit of background, the word hackathon might sound a little dangerous, but it's what the coders and programmers like to call it. It's like a code fest, a programming competition, and that's what we plan on doing. We plan on bringing a lot of bright minds into the town of Lincoln to try and solve several problems that we may be facing or are facing with agriculture. And we'll go through the slides for you, but the big thing that's really important about is they're going to be proving grounds of ideas. We're going to make sure that we stimulate a good creative problem solving that can be used in our agricultural areas, but also in some of our industries, other above agriculture, right? So it could be in flowers and maybe downtown businesses. And the big thing that we're really happy about is hackathons bring two things in our experience. And we have, they bring innovation, but they also allow us to attract and look at talent that we may be able to bring here to solve more problems for the industry. So I'll let Francia start about the hackathon. And
You did a
that's
pretty
her
good job
introduction.
then. Good evening, everyone. So let me explain what AgriTech, we decided to call it the AgriTech Hackathon for sure, but it's an agricultural hackathon. And in this case, it's a 3-day event that we hope to bring that we hope to bring people together, community, businesses, and educational institutionals for a 3-day event in the town of Lincoln, hosted by the town of Lincoln, where we want to problem solve issues that are currently affecting the agricultural and ecotourism sector, especially in the region. The purpose of it is to have, how it works is to have multiple teams, so people will sign up through a registration process. They can do it individually or in teams of 4. And at the event, these teams will come together and they will be given a series of different challenges, or about 5 different challenges that they have to go and bring their expertise, whether it's in software, computer engineering, and they're in agriculture and horticulture, to come together and problem solve these issues. We have, based on our research, we have found that there is about 5 major areas that affect agriculture and ecotourism, not just in the region, but also around the world. One of them being production and environment, ecotourism and sustainability, diseases and pests, soil erosion and depletion, and infrastructure. And just to give you an example of one of the challenges that could be related to infrastructure, it could be irrigation. So, for example, if there is businesses in Niagara, agricultural businesses that are facing issues with irrigation, how can we bring bright minds or professionals together to solve to problem solve an issue such as irrigation? Sorry. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. The next one's what we're showing here is what we've been able to do, and Spark Lincoln's been involved in all of these in the past. It's called Hack Month, and what we're doing with Hack Month is we're connected with universities, colleges, local industry, regional innovation centers, and we are present in those, and we are actually going to be participating, and we'll be able to promote Town of Lincoln and our partnership to all these areas, whether it's Waterloo, Toronto, Windsor, that whole innovation cluster and corridor. So we're going to be part of and have been part of the CISO Cybersecurity Forum. That's a Chief Information Security Officer. That's going to be the new Chief Information Officer or Chief Technology Officer, changing into more security and information protection. We have also a Global Cyber Olympics that's happening at Durham College. They're also a partner of ours with AI. We have a DigiHack EDU, which is happening connected through our Spark Lincoln and our other iHub Niagara, which is a K-12 little incubator that we help students with, connected to Finland, and 38 locations, or 36 locations, in Europe. Brock University, we're doing the Health Symposium with them, and we have the Global Cyber Olympics Finals coming up locally, and the Senior Tech Program. It was a last-minute addition. You probably saw this in your package. Please have a look at that, and you're very welcome. We'll make sure that we bring more information on what we're doing with cyber seniors, what we're doing with the Spark Lincoln pre-program launches for students, and the big thing that we're working on right now is trying to make sure that we have a business after 5 connected to technology and innovation for Town of Lincoln. The biggest win for us is First Robotics will be involved at the hackathon, so that will also help us when we're looking at agrobots for vineyards or for precision spraying and things like that. So it's going to be a really exciting opportunity for us to have this first Niagara opportunity. The location that we've picked is purposely done, town of Lincoln, and it's also purposely done with Beamsville Secondary School, so that we make sure it's an educational institution that's connected there, and that we have enough space, and it's an area where we can do all of the programming and challenges with the young coders and some of the companies that will be involved with helping us with this. And the dates are October 18th to 20th, and we'll make sure we keep letting folks know and letting the community know. So you're all invited. We look forward to that. The sponsorships, basically, is the partners is Town of Lincoln. Town of Lincoln is who we want to highlight. This is a very key area in Niagara. It's an area where we see the opportunity for automation. We see opportunities for skills development, upskilling, reskilling, all the things that we can bring with the opportunities, not only with the hackathon, but some of the other things that we're doing in our little incubator on Mountain Road. The other thing we're working at is we're working closely with the existing innovation sectors. We are proud of our community innovation sector. In other words, you look at Brock and Niagara College, they're on the education post-secondary side. They may be in research and development, but they're not connected as closely to the community. So we enhance what they do and they augment what we do. Same things when we look at sponsorships with our local broadband and Wi-Fi carriers. Very proud of NWIC and Extreme Networks. They've been very, very helpful. We're helping them to understand how we can bring Wi-Fi to rural areas with some of the testing that we're doing with them. We're working closely with Niagara Regional Broadband Network because they have the fiber and we can connect the NWIC towers to that. So that's going to be a great opportunity looking at our grape growers and other areas. But one of the things we're bringing down here, and you'll see it, is a company called Penguin Automations up north. And Penguin Automations is looking at an agrobot that is about precision spraying, and it's got a lot of opportunities for us to look at how we can create programs and coding for that. So it can spray one single grape and not waste any of the spray.
Okay, so we do have prizes, so we want to engage all kinds of talents, because you never know how old the next genius is going to be or where it's going to come from. So we're doing actually 2 levels. So one level for the competition is elementary to secondary, and the second level will be post-secondary to professional. I know you're probably wondering what type of demographics we're trying to engage for the hackathon. So those are the type of ages and people that we're trying to engage. The pricings are up to $10,000, and those $10,000 will be divided between the 2 different levels for different prizes, for first place, second place, third place, within the 2 different levels. Do you want to speak about this?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, just talking to Paul too, just to remind him, this was a first draft. It is not, as it shows there, that there's a remaining $26,000 owing at the end. No, it'll be actually, we're working very closely with the town of Lincoln and looking at sponsorships and opportunities. But most of the things that we're doing are either going to be in kind or with sponsorships from major corporations, private sector partners, and also local businesses. So we're looking at Microsoft, Dell is coming to see us. We're working with Cisco, a lot of big companies, and we'll have their logos all over our webpage, bringing the dollars in for us.
So the long-term goals, this is the first year of the Agritech or Agricultural Hackathon. And because there is, in our research, there's other hackathons around the world. There is one in Saskatchewan. There was one recently in Toronto. There is one in New Zealand. So we're hoping that the Agritech becomes an annual event where we keep on engaging the community, keep on engaging young minds and bright minds to come in and help us problem solve issues with agricultural and ecotourism. But also, we're hoping that the end result of the hackathon is a viable product that can go on to commercialization, hopefully, that can help businesses in a constant basics. This is the reason why participants not only compete for cash prizes, but also business exposure to also sort of support young entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship within the area. So, and also, again, help promote the town and the Niagara region. We want to put the town of Lincoln and the Niagara region in the map in terms of globalization for their agricultural production and power. So with this becoming an annual event, we're hoping to also engage not only participants across Canada, but also globally, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. And just lastly, so why an agricultural or agri-tech hackathon in Lincoln? It should be no surprise to anyone in this room this evening, as well as in the community, that we like to do forward-thinking initiatives that really move this community forward. And at the end of the day, this initiative really does fall in line with our economic development strategy, focusing on agriculture and innovation. In addition, there is an element of talent retention and talent attraction with youth engagement in this opportunity. And overarching, obviously, is to put Lincoln on the map for a location of agricultural excellence. So we do look forward to any questions this evening and open over to you. Over to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councilor Rajima.
Thank you, Chair McPherson. Thanks for the presentation. It's exciting, and it's an exciting initiative. And I know you can't become anything really exciting and really different and really stand out and achieve big things without coming up with innovative ideas like this. So my question is, on page 78 of your presentation, you talked about challenges. Multiple teams will be asked to find probable solutions to a series of given challenges for the agriculture and ecotourism sectors. So can you describe how these challenges will be, how we'll come up with a list for discussion for that weekend?
So generally, what we do in most hackathons is you have 4 or 5 categories. The challenges don't come up from us. We actually engage our advisories, or advisors, which is local growers, local farmers, we're going to be having a meeting, working with Paul and with our other partners on the committee, and trying to get them into the town of Lincoln Spark, Lincoln Incubator. And we'll be meeting very quickly in the next week or so with some of them and asking, what are your challenges below the bench and what are your challenges above the bench? Is it soil? Is it water? Is it ecotourism? And then we select the best breed for each one of those categories, and those are the questions. But we don't give them out until the gamers are here or the coders are here, because we don't want them to cheat. We want them to actually problem solve and push their limits of their knowledge and give us the intellectual property that they're going to leave here for us to move that forward.
Thank you. So can I ask another question, Mr.
Sure.
Chair?
Yep.
So further to that, so you're going to be doing that work in the next week or two or a couple of weeks. And are you looking for further participants? Okay.
Yes, we are. So right now, we're engaging heavily on social media and all kinds of channels to engage. We're working on Niagara College, Brock University, Durham College, and McMaster University, just trying to engage the students. And we're also with the district school boards, Catholic school boards, because we have 2 different levels for the participants. Yeah. So we're trying to engage, different ways to engage them and sort of we have developed brochures and marketing materials to send out to the schools and to go and talk to, we're right now in talks with the deans of different areas in the colleges and universities. So for example, with Niagara College, the horticulture and viniculture program, we're engaging with them to get the students to participate. We're also trying to get students to feel rewarded for participating in the community as well, not just connecting with the community. So we're looking at, right now we're looking with Niagara College to find some sort of a credit, co-curricular credit for community engagement. So participants that come to engage in the agricultural hackathon actually get some credit towards their education or co-curricular education credit, sorry.
So just to get back, if you in this council can help us, we would love to know who would like to be part of the committee to come up with the questions, because we want to know what the problems are, but we won't know them in, just sitting at the town of Lincoln, Spark Lincoln Incubator. So it'd be great if we would love your participation in pointing some folks our way, and we would be pleased to have them develop some of the challenges that they're trying, or a problem to solve.
So you're looking for people also in the industry, I would imagine, people working out there in the agricultural industry and problems that they foresee, right? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair, to the council member, we are engaging our technological partners and agricultural partners in the community to come up with those list of questions. And one of the requirements that I had from Spark is to sort of umbrella those questions around the agricultural industry that we do have in here in Lincoln. So horticulture, traditional agriculture, tourism, wine and grapes. So we've actually identified some key partners that we'll be speaking to over the next little bit to come up with those challenges.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair McPherson. Through to the presenters tonight, thank you very much for coming back. Dino and Francia, nice to see you here. I know when Spark first came, I was so excited. And when I see stuff like this, I get very excited. I think this is fabulous. And my only question would be around creating the teams. So people will have to apply. And what if you're bombarded with so many people that want to participate? I know it's an annual event, but how are you going to choose who's successful on sitting on a team?
So the way we sort of structure it was that you can, because we want to give people as much opportunity as they can to participate. So you can register as an individual if you don't have a team, or if you have a team, you can register as a team of 4. Now, we have given them in the website, when they register, they have about the 5 categories that of interest, where the challenges are going to come from. We get them to pick 3 of those categories when they first register. So once we have all participants, we will sort of organize a team based on what they requested they would like to participate on. So for example, because we want it to be fair and equal, so we will divide the teams into the production and environment category based on their one of their selections, or the ecotourism and sustainability. So we don't, again, like you said, we don't want somebody to, like all the participants to go to infrastructure, or like, we want to level it. So that's why we came up with the selection of the 3 different categories that they will be interested on.
So you're looking at, it looks like 5 teams of 4?
Well, it's 5 categories. Teams will be on 4, but then within those categories, it will be maybe 5 teams or 6 teams. So
okay.
depending,
Okay,
depending on
that's
the
good.
selection.
So, yeah, just to be clear, I'm going to say the more the merrier. We were hoping, right now,
I think so
fully, we're
too.
at 75 registered, 25 being reviewed. We're at 100
Wow.
registered already, but they're in the single pool. None of them have signed up as a team, but we look at their skill set, their experience, their education, and then it tells us if they're strong enough for the area they've picked, or we might give them a suggestion and nudge them over. We have a contingency plan. We will use not only Beamsville Secondary School, we'll also use Spark, and we're looking at the museum, and we've spoken to the library. So we'll make sure that there'll be different areas.
So
that they
there's
can
lots
work.
of opportunity then. I think
We'd
that
love
was
to
my-
see 400. We'll be
Yeah.
happy with 150.
I think that's what
yes.
my
Yeah.
concern, if there was such a limited amount that could actually be successful. Just if I may, Chair McPherson, I just wanted to,
Yeah,
I looked at the coming soon at Spark, and I'm really pleased to see all the senior. I don't know, I spoke about the senior computer. There's a little computer lab that I started in the Queen Street building, and I see that it's expanded with cyber seniors. I'm very familiar with that program, and I'm so excited to see that. And the reverse mentoring was something that I've been hoping would come, and I'm so excited to see this on the paper tonight, and thank you very much for doing that. Did you want to
Don't want to point it. There's a couple other partners here of our team. There's Alexis and Anna. We have a team of 10 now that's working
That's
very
fabulous.
diligently on this stuff. You have to come up and talk about the cyber seniors. It is going to
Yeah.
be world renowned when we're done
Very
this.
excited
There's
about
going to
it.
be filming. There's all kinds of cool things that we're putting together. We'll be bringing back to the council here for your guidance and approval on.
Thank you. So my name is Alexis Kleiman. So thank you again for that comment. I don't want to deviate from much of the conversation about the Agritech Hackathon, but for the senior education programming, we are doing a coupled series. So we're going to be doing 4 week sessions in total, where seniors can opt in for single sessions or the entire series at 4. And then we will be opening, as you see, the pre-launch for the Cyber Seniors program. So we'll be engaging secondary students to engage in that reverse mentoring position and engaging seniors to participate in the labs as well. So we're still working at finalizing the location, but the licensing has been secured. So we're quite excited for that.
That's
Thank you.
great. Yeah, thank you so much.
The
Yes, yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with Cyber Seniors, it's a online digital platform that teaches seniors about really all things digital literacy, starting at entry level around cybersecurity and awareness, and then working the way up to really e-commerce and learning how to engage online. So multiple spectrum level of learners where the students will be the mentor guiding their senior mentee through the program, but it's an internationally renowned program. So.
Great,
Yes,
fabulous.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm one of the excited seniors of this program because an example would be we'd have a student who's going to be mentoring a senior, but they have hearing disability. We'll put a set of headcuffs on, like a headset on them that they can't hear, and we'll talk so they can experience who they're going to be mentoring. Those are small examples of what we're working on. By the way, some of you have already been picked. It'll be a surprise. Paul will let you know which one of you will be on certain hackathons. So.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Easton.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and it's great to have Spark back and with such a concrete and progressive idea. It's great to know that this is happening in our community. So I think it's great. If everybody sitting around this table really knows what you're talking about, I think that's great. But you're going to have to work a little harder for me because I don't know what this means. And I've looked up what a hackathon is, so I want to use the irrigation piece as an example. So if the stakeholders have irrigation on their property, or maybe they don't, but they also identify a need, can you explain to me how this process would help them implement a more effective system in the future? Because my problem is that I can't make the connection between the software element, the information that you need, and the creation of data sets and possibly diagrams and all of that. I can't figure it out in my head. So I need you to be a little bit more explicit about that.
Through you, Chair. So, Your Worship, I mean, the easiest answer is we pose that question to the youth that are coming to this event and say, solve this problem for us. So, I mean, we're asking them to look at innovative ways to solve the issues that we have in our agricultural community. And so that's the overarching answer, but I'll turn to Dino if there's something else he can add.
Yeah, so we are going to be bringing together something really interesting, and we love to call it the nexus of forces, a bunch of forces that we're all used to. There's mobile, there's cloud, there's data. So cloud is the computer in the cloud. There's data, and of course, there's social innovation. We are going to be using the cloud as a place to put all of this data that they're going to be programming. From there, we can create automation systems that measure how much water is going through a little pipe or down the irrigation channel. It'll measure the moisture of the soil, how deep the water has gone. Again, I'm not a farmer, but I can tell you technically there's all kinds of what they call the IoT, Internet of Things, that have sensors, that have technology that there's touch, there's what they call near frequency Wi-Fi that is close by that can sense if there's something happening that is incorrect, or how do we not use as much water or reuse water that's being wasted, right? So there'd be maybe a catchment. There could be other ways that they solve the problem. We're all looking forward to something out of the box, but we'll be using every piece of technology that's out there, and it's available to us. Working with all of the innovation centers and the innovation clusters, we have access to the technology.
And I'm sorry, people will, the participants will be able to access maybe not an unlimited amount, but certainly a very, very wide range of information that may be available from all over the world.
So let me give you an example, Your Worship. We are going to be going to Waterloo to work with the Computer Space Agency and NASA with some of our youth here in Niagara, and it's called the CSA Hackathon at Communitech. They give us access to the satellites, all of the weather satellites that are free and open. They're not secure ones, and we use that data to try and solve a problem for weather. We can do the same thing with satellites for geospatial, looking at the terrain, using information that's already stored from drones and big databases. So all of that will be available to us from all of our partners in this Agritech-a-thon.
Okay.
It's very small word, but we have very deep roots into the Mars supercluster, the Waterloo corridor. We also have a good connection to the Western New York corridor with University of Buffalo all the way down to Rochester. So we'll be using a lot of their compute power and their technology to make sure that video, sensors, robotics, all of this is available in prototype form.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I just have one more question. Once that information has been, comes together with some solutions, maybe there's more than one solution, or they're in different parts, whatever it is, do the stakeholders or the users of these solutions then come forward again, and are there opportunities to refine it based on local conditions, or are all the local conditions taken into account by virtue of the access to the information that's available?
No, so it's actually going to be refined to our local conditions. We want to gather data from our soil, our water, our terrain or gradients of the farm or the area. So it's our mapping of the Niagara and the town of Lincoln region. So we gain from that because this young startup or these young minds, ladies and men and youth and girls, basically will be able to stay here. They have the prototype. Now it's Spark's job to bring it to something that becomes a finished product using our connections to the supercluster that's out there. So
Okay,
that's what our
actually,
game- yeah.
Mr. Deani is not a teacher,
Yeah.
and thank you so much.
Yeah, so-
That was a great technical answer, Your Worship.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenters, I think this is a pretty neat, innovative idea that we've come up with here that you brought before us. I think it's fantastic to bring these hackers to get together rather than hacking a credit card number, a security system to tackle problems that we have currently with agriculture. So a little bit of my question may have been answered. How I'm defining success to be providing solutions or hopeful for solutions to these problems that we're being challenged with regards to agriculture. What about numbers? Like I noticed you were rather excited when 75 people were in attending and hoping for 400. How do we determine success from a numbers perspective or an attendance perspective?
For an attendance perspective, for our first hackathon, 100 to 150 is good because we're bringing young minds here that are doing nothing but coding. This isn't just sitting in front of the computer using gaming, which, gaming is a good thing for collaboration and all the things that they do. But these are actually, it could be a post-secondary student, it could be a grade 11 or 12 student who really enjoys coding, making apps. And we'll give you an example. We never thought we could come up with something really interesting for snowplows. We thought, how were we going to use limited dollars, limited connection to Wi-Fi, cellular, all the fancy stuff that's out there, microcell. When you have a plow who's moving around a route but doesn't know what's in front of them in a snowstorm or something else, and a grade 12 student came up with a great ingenious idea. Why don't we use Waze? So you call Waze, because Waze is being used by millions of people and constantly putting information in there, so that if there's something in the way of the snowplow, the Waze app, which is connected to the snowplow app that they made, will show them, hey, ahead is something, an obstruction. And again, making it to the local terrain, they're able to say to the snowplow driver, oh, I'm not going to hit that little obstruction or whatever, using existing technology, but tucking it into a brand new app that goes on your phone or on an iPad in the truck. That's a small example.
No, that sounds perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm excited to see how this all pans out.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenters. Again, I find this very exciting, especially again when I hear things about like coding, because again, we have two girls and they're in grade 5 and grade 3, and they've been learning coding in school for 2 or 3 years now. And again, I know the very, very limited amount of what they're talking about now. So again, I'm looking forward to getting a little more information from this. A couple questions. One question would be, you mentioned just briefly intellectual property, and I'm just curious to see if there is some major innovations, who holds the intellectual property rights to anything that might come out of these functions?
It would be the town of Lincoln. That's the reason we would have the hackathon here, to solve our problem. We want their opportunity to come here, show us what the prototype would look like, then we take it over as town of Lincoln and Spark, and then move it forward, because just solving the problem with the prototype, now you need more, more an infusion from an accelerator, from another connection, and that IP would be ours, because we'd have to invest in that to growth stage. So not just ideation, concept ideation and incubation, but the growth stage. So the IP would be owned by us here.
So 100%?
100%. All we do is, unless they've already come with some solution that's half done and half baked, they have to disclose that.
Okay.
But that's why it's a competition. They have to come with a clean slate and just their skill set.
And are they signing a waiver to that
Yes,
effect?
they are. They'll be signing a waiver and all that, yes.
Good, like to hear
Yeah.
that. And one further question, if you may, Mr. Chair. To Mr. Deaney, I know we have budget coming up. If this is going to be an annual event, is there some consideration that we should be expecting to maybe support future endeavors?
Through your chair, at this point, we potentially, but at this point, we're still going to ascertain the success of this year, and then we can look forward into the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So seeing no further questions, my only question left was, I don't imagine this is a spectator sport, is it? We're not expecting, big crowds to show up at Beamsville High to watch this, are we?
We would love spectator sports. You should see how busy it gets when parents get to tell the aunt and the cousins and then other folks, the businesses saying, hey, you should go down and see what they're doing. And they love it. The hackers love it. So, yes, we want to welcome anyone from the town to walk through and have a Coke with us or pop or whatever. So.
To you, Chair, part of the reason why we worked on having the location in downtown was to bring a potential 150 individuals plus their parents to the downtown core. So we are working both with our communications department as well as the Beamsville BIA to potentially offer some packages or something along those lines to get people to shop and dine downtown.
So my only question was from a promotion standpoint, and I did see today that we had a press release that has been created. This is a pretty significant event. I think this is pretty cool that we're putting this on. Is there any kind of plan to tie a article into a Grimsby Lincoln News or St. Catharines Standard? I'm sure there is.
To you, Chair, I look over my corner or my shoulder, and I hope so.
Yeah.
We are going to work our traditional media sources as well, but we'll look to Spark to work their network as well.
Great.
There's one great thing about this that we're hoping to do for the school boards, especially since we're using Beamsville with DSBN. Now that we have the specialist high skill major programs, DSBN has put so much effort and strength in making sure that those programs are connected to real world learning and connected to the businesses in town of Lincoln, and also working with our coterminous board, the Catholic board, and the French boards.
Great. Okay, so thank you, Dino and Francia and your whole team over there, and you're doing great work, and we're proud to have you here in town. It's a win-win. So thank you very much. So I have a motion to accept the presentation by Spark Lincoln. I need a mover for that motion. Councillor Russell, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Our next presentation may take longer than 10 minutes, and I would like to request that council extend the time of this next delegation. Those in favor? Those in favor? Okay, we will extend a little longer. We actually have two presentations here in one, pretty much. Okay. We have staff presentation with Alicia Young and Brian Blue regarding results of the Digital Main Street and Business Walks initiatives. Paul Deaney will provide some opening remarks, so please come forward.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the committee. As the committee will recall, we were in front of you in the spring to talk about our summer activities revolving around our business and retention and expansion element of our economic development strategy. So again, tonight I'm referencing the document that Council passed in the fall, and basically we're working this document, we're working the plan. So I am going to turn over to Alicia and Brian to sort of give a little bit of a synopsis of what we did on the summertime, and then I can follow up with some closing remarks. So thank you, and over to you.
Hello, good evening. I'm Alicia. So yeah, Digital Main Street. It's been a crazy, fun summer. And for me, that's saying a lot because I'm a workaholic and I believe that work is kind of not to be blended with fun. That's what I grew up as, but this has shown me it's way more than that. So those of you who may not know what Digital Main Street is, so Town of Lincoln applied for a grant and they got it, yay. For us. So we got it for both the Town of Lincoln and the Beamsville BIA, so I will be speaking to the Town of Lincoln's portion, aka my portion. So what I kind of found from this program was that it did give us valuable insight into the economic development landscape of the town. You know, coming into my educational background is in economic development, so coming into it, I was kind of expecting, you know, this is businesses, this is government, and it kind of showing that's very separated. But then as I got more into the role, you realize it's not very separated. And it really encouraged the conversation about how the town can aid with the businesses. So when first approaching the businesses, they were like, who are you? And what is this free program? Because unfortunately, we live in a culture where free usually comes with a but or an if at the end. So this was a very refreshing experience to go in and be like, hey, this is free. This is not going to cost you anything. It's backed by the Town of Lincoln, and I'm here from the Town of Lincoln to help you in the best way I can. So one business kind of joked around with me and called it Ask a Millennial, which I love because many of the businesses that I work with were in the older age cohort. So a lot of the social media or online presence was kind of lost to them. They either didn't know what Instagram or Facebook was, or they knew what it was and was just like, it's too much of a task for me to take on right now, and it's kind of overwhelming. So I was just kind of a friendly face to be, okay, it's not so scary. It can be, mind you, because of all the negative reactions we tend to get sometimes on social media, but it can be beneficial for the company as well. And then as well, just to go back, so with the businesses that I did contact, I kind of started a kind of preliminary business directory, since I knew that was kind of the intention of the Economic Development Department in the future. So I kind of, you know, kept on track, you know, what businesses I was approaching, so we can have that information ready to go for when we're ready for that next step later on. So just a review of the experience. A lot of them were already utilizing a lot of the online presence kind of material that I kind of taught them. So I kind of at first had to go over, kind of reevaluate what I was going to kind of teach or work with the businesses on. So a lot of the newer businesses that were in the area had a really good social media presence. So, you know, I can't really go in and tell them what they're doing wrong if I believe what they're doing is really good. So it's just a matter of fine-tuning little things that I found that could make their social media presence more efficient, such as using, you know, a program to run their contests or email contact and that kind of variation. So in the photo here, you'll actually see these are all the businesses as well as town assets that I took active 360 pictures on. So for those of you who aren't aware what a 360 photo is, it's basically like a camera was here right now, and you can view all around the room and up and down and everywhere you scroll. So I took, part of the Digital Main Street program was taking these photos for businesses and putting them on Google and Google My Business. But I also, while I was out working with the businesses, took pictures of town assets such as the cemeteries and the parks to also put online to kind of spread out the natural beauty that is Lincoln. So someone that is not from here, I love Lincoln. I'm from the East Coast originally, so it reminds me a lot of home, so I've grown to love. It's been awesome. So these are just for a little of those who love their numbers and data, because I do. So of all the participants that I've encountered in the 2.5 months I was roughly here, there was 30 total participating businesses that I interacted with. 24 to 25 of those, if there was another one added, actually took advantage of the complimentary 360 photo shoot, as I like to call it, and that number is growing still. Since throughout the summer, my contract had an end date, so I was kind of spreading that kind of ended then, but now since I'm still here, I'm getting back out there and just reminding the businesses that I am now here for a little while longer, so those who did not have a time or the option to kind of do that during the busy summer, they can now take advantage of what may be a slower time and approach me. So the grant applications, so the digital transformation grant was a big part of the Digital Main Street program. So what that did was businesses had to complete training videos as well as make a kind of impromptu proposal as to how they can digitally transform their business. So I worked with one business on how they can kind of redevelop their kind of lookbook, so to say, for their business to kind of show clients their previous work because they didn't want to put it online because of copyright. So I kind of worked with them on that, and hopefully that gets approved. There is a few more in process right now. As you saw there, there's about 4. That number has grown a bit since I've announced that it's still in the area for the next few months. So they're very excited about that. And now that Digital Main Street has announced that the official deadline to apply for the grant is December 29th, I am very much excited to try and get more and more businesses on board, since there is still a large portion of the grants unclaimed or unapproved for. So what I kind of found was that the grant applications is only for a certain area. So the central business district of each Vineland, Jordan, or Beamsville could apply for the grant, but I figured from my standpoint that, you know, those who weren't interested in the grant were just kind of going to brush me off. But about 7, as you see here, and a few more, since then it's grown as well, that is actually very excited about the program regardless of the incentive of, you know, a kind of free money. So they're just taking advantage of me being here and kind of, you know, ask me anything. I'll look for it. If I don't know it, I am becoming a master of Google as well. So I can look on, find you links. If I can't find a good way to explain something, I'll definitely find a video or something that's a little more geared towards you or comfortable with. So a lot of the services that I work with the businesses with, a lot of them have come back, said, we need help with our social media, kind of how to make it more efficient. And any other one was website development. A lot of the businesses in the area do have a business website, but it's not to the, again, most efficient way to use it. So they're trying to think of ways that they can maybe make it better that I could research and help them with, or through the grant, just have access to the resources so they can go and hire someone of a professional nature to come in and do that with them since they cannot, or if they cannot. So just some more stats. So 25 of the businesses have the 360 images so far. So 11 of the town assets, so parks and the cemeteries. And these were the public parks and cemeteries. I made sure to do that. So on average, each businesses, I took about 6.5 pictures, or 7, since we can't take a half a photo. And then already, so on average for each businesses, they've already grown their kind of viewership of the business of about 1,200 views. And just to kind of give you a holistic perspective, I have uploaded about 275 photos on Google, and already we have over 30,000 views. So it's amazing. It's almost like an addicting game to me because it's almost like, how can we make it bigger? How can we make it bigger? And I've kind of noticed a noticeable drop lately that throughout the summer I was peaking, and then after school it kind of dipped a little bit. So now I'm kind of looking into, what can we do to kind of get more people to look online, get more area? Is it because people are back to school now that maybe they're not Googling the area so much? So kind of getting into the, dirt and bones of our media presence. So a few recommendations that I've kind of taken from the project for the summer. A few of the businesses were really interested in kind of taking on a green initiative, but we're really sure about where to go with it. So with some of our community improvement plans, I've given them some kind of shared links to different grants and things like that they can maybe apply for. And encourage a co-learning among businesses. So with each businesses, I found myself kind of repeating a very kind of basic guideline to each businesses and then kind of customizing it depending on what they needed. So I think that, you know, with like a common co-learning area or just access, we can really, you know, build this, you know, business to business, like team building. You know, we're each a business in Lincoln. We all are striving for prosperity and a place to belong and grow, not to, you know, tie in our line there. But, you know, how can we do that together as well? So, you know, if one business has a really amazing social media presence and they're, you know, doing all the hashtag stuff and the videos and all that, how can they in turn maybe give a little tips to the businesses that are maybe struggling or something along those lines? And another kind of idea I kind of brought from that is kind of encouraging the co-learning as well as kind of communication is, you know, we recently came up with the Culture and Play Link in Ontario, which I love. But I was also thinking we can also create a Work Link in Ontario. So more of a space for the businesses that are in the area, but as well as for the people that are looking to maybe come into the area for business. So a huge driver is, you know, is attraction. So doing different things like that. And is also encouraging like local job postings and doing kind of things like that to, again, to get the local workforce out there. And that is everything for me. Is, not sure. Okay.
Thank you, Alicia. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to kind of convey a summary of my experiences for this summer. Firstly, I'd just like to take a moment to thank the Deputy Clerk for her assistance in helping me prepare and just extending the extra time that we asked for. So thank you very much. So what I'll be doing is just giving you a short kind of chronological summary of some of the initiatives that we implemented throughout the summer. I mean, Lord knows that we had more than a few during this summer, but I'm just going to focus on some of the key points and key things. So my first day actually was on May 13th. Turned out to be a very influential date on some of the other projects that I worked on. And during the month of May, it was a period of adjustment and getting acclimatized to the organization. And during this experience, the Director of HR and the Economic Development Officer really allowed me to get a feel for what was expected of me. You know, Paul put me in a position where we went out and we attended a presentation by Dr. Charles Conte on the agricultural cluster in Niagara and really making it more efficient and more resilient. Additionally, I attended a community economic development presentation hosted by OMAFRA, which was also attended by Councillor Mikulik. A little later on, I think we attended the Biosphere at Balls Falls to get a sense of some of the conservation assets that we have at our disposal and really enhance those through, I think it's the UN Biosphere project that Councillor McPherson also attended with Councillor Timmers. And this was really just a period of getting adjusted and not only learning the internal stakeholders, but getting a sense of interacting with some of our partners in the region, St. Catharines, Grimsby, and whatnot. And then shifting into June, our main focus was really putting into action the tourism strategy and helping out Janice and Mike. There was a lot of data collection, preparing for our focus group with our stakeholders, and really just trying to make sure that that got on the ground running and assist them in any way possible. In the month of July, I got a chance, Paul put me in a position to really take a look at our special events permit and really examine best practices by other municipalities. What are some things that we could do internally to try and make the process and the permit more efficient? It really allowed me also to interact with all of the departments involved and really get a sense of how we could work together in cohesion cooperation to try and make this a more efficient policy that serves the community, doesn't hinder them in any way. And also that was preparation for, I guess, our primary goal of the summer was to implement through our business retention and expansion strategy the business walks, which many of you participated in. And what the business walks entailed was preemptively, it was my job to go out to what ended up being 108 retail businesses in Beamsville, Jordan Village, and Vineland, and really try to convey a message to, our goal was to connect with business owners, managers, decision makers, and hopefully make them available on certain dates where yourselves could accompany both Paul and I and Alicia and really get a sense of, pulse of what's going on in our business community. And there was 5 events, as I mentioned, in Beamland, Jordan Village, and Vineland. As I mentioned, over 100 businesses visited. And in conclusion, there was approximately 350 engagements where myself, yourselves, and our teammates were connecting with our businesses and really trying to convey the message that we were there to solve problems and stimulate business growth and alleviate any challenges that they might be having. And some of the areas that I feel that we could improve on there were businesses that just were unwilling to participate, period. Like just didn't want anything to do with us for whatever reason. And that's not even talking about the businesses who were complaining. And I think it's our job to really connect with those businesses and find out. And something that came up that I could speak to a little later on in the proposal was taking advantage of these negative situations and turning them into positives. So as I mentioned, how can we better connect with these stakeholders? One of the goals was the dropping off a survey and collecting data. I personally found getting some of these business owners to complete the survey, and not only complete it, but put detailed content that we could actually use was extremely difficult. It was like pulling teeth. Like I literally had to go back several times to businesses like, hey, did you do the survey? And you try and do it in a diplomatic way where you don't want to feel like it's a burden on them. And just, how can we really help you is what we were trying to do. So I think there's ways of maybe we could deliver it ahead of time, do it digitally, just something moving forward. I think that is an area that should we continue with this initiative in the future. That's an area of improvement. And also timelines to solve major issues. As I go through each community, there are certain issues that came up that just were outside of our ability to resolve. And so I would start with, our first initiative was on the Ontario Street corridor in Beamsville. That was attended by Councillor Russell, Councillor Mikulik, Councillor Reimer, and we just really, it was our first initiative getting out. And I think some of the responses that we got, and a lot of people, Dr. Thomas Gadsby, who's been a practicing chiropractor in the region for 25 years, was like, no one from the town has ever really engaged me. And he actually brought up an issue that I had previously met with Councillor Russell about, was the illegal signage along the street. And he brought that issue in a positive way, but he was also very supportive. Like, he was very happy that we got out there. There was other business owners who, like, for example, once again, I sat there with you, Councillor Russell, for a period of 10 minutes where the owner of Family Pizza and Shawarma was arguing with us about pizza licenses. And very politely, Councillor Russell had to extract, like, we don't give out pizza licenses, but, is there anything else we can do to alleviate your concerns? And in that process, we ended up connecting the owner with Alicia and the Digital Main Street. And I personally went back there. I never had a slice of his pizza, but I ate shawarma several times later on. And really, he's currently selling his business. And I was able to create a personal connection with him and kind of figure out, why are you selling your business? What's going on? What are some of the things that, do you have a succession plan? Is it something that, his children were potentially involved in taking over the business? And I think ultimately, one of the specific goals was creating a connection with these people and showing, as I mentioned, that we cared. For the downtown core of Beamsville, which was the following day, the general consensus were 2 major issues, which you're all very aware of, so I don't want to beat a dead horse, would be parking. And as you discussed last week on the 11th of September, where you had Director Dave Graham, an external consultant, and I think Walter present on truck traffic. And if I could just speak personally, I participated in a project with Director Shannon McKay and her team of Communities in Bloom, and we were hosting the 2 judges in our downtown core in Beamsville, 2:30 in the afternoon, and we were walking them through with also the executive director, Stephanie Hicks, and myself. And I'm not exaggerating, in a period of 15 minutes, you had 17 to 18 trucks come through, and you had to stop talking, where it was such, this isn't a matter of economic development. It's just like standard of living and quality of life. So It's my job to convey these sentiments, and people were very, very explicit that this was a major problem. But as I mentioned, this is something that I know you're all aware of, and you are proactively working to try to resolve. Moving forward, also in Jordan Village, we got generally a positive result from people there. One of the most valuable contributions that we got, there were two. There's one positive, the owner, Alex, of the Safari Gift Shop. He was really hoping to see maybe a summer festival. I mean, we have the Winter Ice Wine Festival, and what can we continue to do to draw attention to? That's probably our most established tourism area. How can we continue to leverage that asset to drive economic activity, and not just any activity? Like he was very explicit that he's trying to target a specific tour group. And it gave us an opportunity. We met with a representative from, I just want to make sure I pronounce this correctly, Monster Flooring, a gentleman by the name of Monty, and Councillor Timmers, Councillor Mikulik, Councillor McPherson, Paul and I sat there for what was 45 minutes, where that individual was extremely frustrated with what had happened previously. And I think it turned into a very unique opportunity where we allowed the individual to express his frustrations, get it off his chest, and put us in a position to solve the problem. And it gave us an opportunity to really see what was going on with this business and how we could connect some of our resources to help them. And that was one thing where the Economic Development Officer has put together the industrial areas and rural land, or the industrial lands and rural areas, CIP, and it's a chance where that individual had purchased an industrial zone in Beamsville, and it's a chance for us to kind of do right by him. Previously, you had this complaint, but put your faith in us to solve a challenge, solve a problem. And I think that's one of the greatest strengths that we could draw from this, was just listening to our community, allowing them to vent. And not every situation is going to be positive. Give us a challenge to solve, and when we solve that, we're taking what could be our harshest critic and making them one of our greatest allies, and someone who's championing us as a town and the administrative services that we provide to really create a more competitive business environment. And finally, just with Vineland, I think in general, a lot of the concerns were with the downtown core was just the lack of development. A lot of business owners were, I guess they wanted to see more growth. They took a look at their regional partners in Jordan Village and Beamsville, and they see that they're a step behind, and their downtown core does not have any vibrancy. And what can we do to help stimulate the business environment for them? And I think ultimately it really gave us a chance to connect with our business community, and it's something that the majority of people didn't feel that we had done before. And it really gave us a sense of how we can continue to evolve and provide more effective services moving forward. And also, like for me personally, it really allowed me to interact with other departments here. And as I mentioned here, it increases interdepartmental cooperation, cohesion, which allowed us to provide more efficient services for our community. And that's kind of like in conclusion, one of the things that during my experience at the University of Waterloo, where I now successfully completed the requirements to get my master's in economic development and innovation, one of the things that was a major area of interest for me was organizational effectiveness. And I kind of want to speak to my experience on first the internal administrative side, and then just share perspective for you as counselors. And when I arrived here, it took me a little while to get my footing and understand my role and how to best be an employee and how I could maximize this experience to not only for my own personal and professional development, but contribute to the town of Lincoln. And it was about halfway point, I came across a quote, and it really established my professional compass. And I'd like to read, like, our goal, while not always easy, is to work together towards something bigger than our individual objectives. It is to support one another and in turn the community where we work. We try to foster a culture of leadership where everybody has the opportunity and responsibility to lead from within, no matter your position. We should always try to learn from setbacks and opportunities as well as successes that we achieve. One of our focuses, and a focus of many organizations today, is that we build a solution-focused team that strives to always respond to challenges. Our vision of a place to grow, a place to prosper, and a place to belong was chosen not only to reflect our community, but also internal staff. We want the town to be a workplace that supports its employees by showing them gratitude for their commitment, challenging them in their roles, and trusting them to lead and make decisions. And leading up to my most important initiative for the summer, this really enabled me to move forward and engage the community where I felt confident that I could be bold, I could be creative. And these are the words from our CAO. And not only does the CEO embody these words, and it's very accessible, has an open door policy, on several occasions, I approached him and he provided me personal insight to do my job better, but also just friendly conversation, was extremely accessible. But also it's something that's embodied by your entire leadership. Where if I made the Director of Planning, Kathleen Dale, I've lost track how many times I approached Kathleen and knocked on her door, and she would drop whatever she was doing to resolve whatever challenge I was facing. And not only give me the specific knowledge that she had through her expertise and experience, she taught me to give me the capacity where I didn't need to continue to seek her. Also the same with the Associate Director, Matt Bruder. I collaborated with Matt on several occasions, whether it be the special events or trying to be creative and innovative to solving the truck traffic problem. Director Shannon McKay, who collaborated with me also on the special events permit and provided very insightful comment where we could use this as a way to stimulate business growth in community by generating more awareness in our events and functions. The manager of bylaw, Dan Smith, where on numerous occasions we had follow-up meetings and we had to go out to the community, and it wasn't a matter of economic development, it was a matter of bylaw where I would approach Dan, and I wasn't an intern, he treated me like a colleague, and he joined me to alleviate several concerns, like for example, the parking issue in downtown Beamsville with the bakery, with the fiber garden. He went out and addressed the parking concerns. Councillor Rajima with Siva and Shoppers Drug Mart. Dan spearheaded that, went out, met him, and really proactively engaged the community to solve these problems. And I would also say, also the clerk's department, the finance department, and also I'd like to say the manager of IT, John Brown, literally instructed his staff to help me out in any way possible that didn't impede their ability to provide services for there. And we are in the business of people. And whether you're looking at a municipality like Toronto, St. Catharines, Grimsby, we all have similar department structures, similar services, but our most sustainable and strategic advantage is how we do our job and really maximizing getting the most out of our employees and finding a way to optimize people. And kind of in closing, I can't tell you what it's like to be a councillor or the mayor, but I can tell you what it's like to be an intern. And in my role, just engaging with each one of you, small little things like your outgoing personalities and friendliness really helped me do my job and made me feel appreciated. It gave me gratitude for this opportunity. I can speak of like a couple of opportunities. One would be after the first day of our Business Walks initiative, I actually followed up with Councillor Mikulik and Councillor Reimer, and they pulled me aside after, and they were very curious about how they could positively contribute to these initiatives moving forward, learn more about it. And we had a little meeting, and they also, shortly after we addressed that, they also invested in my professional development, personal development. And it was something where, you know, a couple of days later, Councillor Reimer, you were walking through the office and you walked past my cubicle and looked at me and kept on walking. And I was like, you know, he didn't acknowledge me, and then literally took 2 steps back and walked up to me. He's like, hey, Brian, how's it going? He shook my hand, and it just filled me with so much as I mentioned, like gratitude, people want to be recognized and appreciated. And I'd say the power to all of you is simply walk around this building and talk to people. You're our leadership, and you really fill us with purpose. And I would say each one of you did that on numerous occasions. I feel like I'm running out of time here. I don't want to keep on speaking.
Well, your time is long run out.
Sorry, okay. So I did. In closing, I'd just like to say, like, it was an incredible experience, and I'm grateful to all of you. And at any point in time, if there's anything I can do to continue to positively contribute to this community, the Economic Development Officer has my contact information. Thank you very much.
And by the way, I like the shave, the clean-shaven look. Looking good.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the committee. Brian, thank you for the eloquent comments, and Alicia and Brian for all the work that you did over the course of the summer. As Alicia did mention, she's a semester behind Brian in the same program, so she's now doing her internship with us and will be with us until the end of December. So over to the committee for questions. Thank you.
Okay, we have Councillor Pachariva.
Chairman, and I would just like to say, and I know that you made that notion at the start of the meeting that we're not supposed to clap, but I just want to congratulate Alicia and Brian for a job well done. Brian, you were making me misty talking there, and I just want to say it was a pleasure having you both here. The work, the commitment, just the effort that you put forth. The business walks were dynamite. Fantastic. So I would like to clap and say, thank you, job well done. And if you ever need anything from us, just shoot us an email. So kudos.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, like Councillor Pachariva, would like to say thank you. And if we can somehow get that speech put on a T-shirt.
Won't fit. It won't fit.
I'd be happy to wear it around. One thing I would be interested to see is some of the data that was collected from the businesses, even though, again, it was very difficult to receive, just to see what comes in. And then also, again, taking that next step, if someone could pick up where that was left off and then maybe reach out digitally to, again, where I do think your response rate will be much higher. I think there's a lot of unplowed fields there that we could really tap into. So I'm curious to see what comes out of that. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenters. Very well done. Usually I have a question. This time I don't seem to have one, which is a compliment to yourselves. I just, some comments. I thought it was, like I said to the both of you and to Paul as well, it's incredibly important to recognize the existing business owners and to show that we do care. We are willing to knock on your door, and you guys made it a little easier because we were able to walk in offering something where most people, they don't know what they want. They want to complain about something. They don't know what they want. And it was nice to offer them something or even an ear to be listened to. And I enjoyed getting to know the two of you and your enthusiasm. And yeah, anytime you need any advice, feel free to call any of us. Thank you.
Councillor Timmers.
I'll keep it short. I don't really have any questions, but I kind of along the same line. I really enjoyed it. I think it was a fantastic initiative, and I congratulate you both on all the effort and work that you put into it. It was really, really a good experience for everyone. And I think some of the businesses, the look of surprise on their faces when we showed up, it was priceless. They're like, you're coming to see us? It's like, yes, we're coming to see you. And you're right, I don't think it hasn't been done before, and I do think we have to keep that door open. And I wish you all the best, Brian. And Alicia, I'm glad you're staying on. And well done. Congrats. And thank you.
I think Mr. CIO has a comment.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I too will try to keep my comments incredibly brief. But I wanted to offer my thanks both to Alicia and Brian. Alicia, I haven't gotten to know you quite as well as Brian, but I'm happy that you're going to be here for the next number of months. But I can say your enthusiasm is contagious. I look forward to talking to you more. And your work ethic. Those are the two things that I would highlight, the ability to take initiative. And so I encourage you to keep that, to continue to foster that, and we will be chatting more. And Mr. Blue, I mean, what can I say about Brian? I think we heard it this evening. A young man that takes initiative, that I have no doubt will have an incredibly successful career ahead of him. So my thanks to both of you for your contribution to this organization, to all of us as a team. Anytime we bring in anyone, whether they're interns, whether they're people that are here for a month or a year or 2 years, you leave a lasting impression on all of us, and hopefully we've done that in some small way for you. So my sincere gratitude as well.
Okay, and I would like to mention one other person, and I hope I get his name right. Kia? Is it? Kian. So there was a third, and another person at Digital Main Street that focused on Beamsville, and he was also part, I would say, of the team. You know, congratulations. You know, I just think that we've done a great thing here, reaching out to some of the small businesses that we have, and Councilor Mikulik said it very well, that for us to just go in there cold, it's tougher, and just say, hi, I'm here from the town, but you laid the groundwork to, you know, walk in there and support you. What I was looking at was support of our economic development initiative, and just be there as a representative of the town. So to me, this wasn't a council-driven initiative. This was economic development initiative, and good on you too for helping us to accomplish, you know, some of the key initiatives that we've got in the economic development strategy. So well done. Okay, so any other further comments? Is that it? Are we finished with
No,
you
Your
tonight?
Worship, I think Brian Alicia said it all.
All right, so I have a motion to accept the presentation of Digital Main Street, and I know it was more than this, but the Business Walks Initiative. Can I get a mover? Councilor Timmers, all in favor? And that is carried. Next, we'll move to the consent agenda. We have come to the consent portion of the agenda, which has 4 items. Item 7.1, Municipal Heritage Committee Minutes of May 16th, 2019. Item 7.2, Municipal Heritage Committee Minutes of June 13th, 2019. Item 7.3, PD-61-19, Request to consider a minor variance application by Art and Tanya Groneveld. And item 7.4, PD-62-19, Second Quarter Building Permit Activity Report. Would any member of council like to remove any items from the consent agenda to discuss? Seeing none, we will require a mover for the motion to pass the consent agenda items. Mary Easton, all in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. We now come to the regular agenda portion. We are now considering item 8.1, PD-63-19, zoning bylaw amendment application by Dennis Skinner. Are there any questions from council? There being no discussion, we have a motion that council approves zoning bylaw amendment application PLZ AT U201-90104 in the name of Dennis Skinner, and that council enact and pass zoning bylaw attached as Appendix B of the Planning and Development Department Report PD-63-19 to amend the zoning regulations for lands at 4459 Maple Grove Road, subject to the following conditions. A, that the owner enter into a temporary use agreement with the town to ensure that the dwelling is removed or converted back into a non-residential use upon expiry of the temporary use bylaw. B, that a cash deposit or letter of credit in the amount of $5,000 be submitted to the town to ensure that the above agreement is complied with. And C, that the temporary use bylaw not be presented to council until the conditions above have been complied with. And that council deem that zoning bylaw conforms to the official plan for the town of Lincoln. We will require a mover for the motion. Councilor Regima, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Council considered all the written and oral submissions and agrees with the planning report analysis and recommendations and finds that, subject to the conditions of approval, this application meets the Planning Act criteria, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and complies with the growth plan, the Niagara Region official plan, and the town official plan. We are now considering item 8.2 PD-64-19, parking on an unauthorized area of land bylaw and amendments to the administrative monetary penalty system bylaw. Are there any questions from council? Councilor Pachariva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you probably to Mr. Smith or Mr. Bruder. So with respect to chronic offenders, so, and I know clean yards and all that kind of stuff, wondering if there's a provision in here for chronic offenders. So someone doesn't comply, you give them an order, they comply, so they come off the books. But there are situations where there's chronicness, and so if there is that, wondering if, 1, 2, 3 strikes you're out, or if the fines will escalate.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So the fines can escalate. However, it's a parking matter, so it's a set fine under a parking ticket. It's an immediate ticket if we find somebody in violation. However, to answer your question about the repeat offenders, is we do have the ability, if somebody is just disregarding the bylaw, taking the tickets, paying them or not paying them, we can move forward with what's known as a Part 3 charge on top of that. So that falls out of our AMPS bylaw and goes back into the Provincial Offences Act. And we can issue them a summons to court to speak to it in front of a justice of the peace. It also provides us the authority under the parking and AMPS bylaw to tow vehicles if we had to. That would be a extreme last measure to remove a vehicle from someone's front yard. But there are options there for our team.
Okay, fantastic. And another question, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Through you and again to probably Mr. Smith or Mr. Bruder. With respect to parking on an agricultural property. So I know Councillor Bernay faced this a couple years. So an agricultural property, now it was on Mountain View Road and it was part of the Niagara Escarpment Commission. So the diagram where you will allow parking across the entire property, is that, we don't want to turn agricultural properties into storage yards for trailers and boats and buses and mobile homes and this and that or the other. So wondering how we can address that. So because an agricultural land is meant to be used for agricultural, not a parking lot. So just curious how we're going to deal with that. Because I don't feel that we want to go down that situation again.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. So, this bylaw is, as you know, specific to the residential portions of residential zones within the community. However, we weren't receiving our complaints from agricultural lands. We also have pieces within our zoning bylaw that speak to salvage yards, things of that nature, which give us some authority to restrict what people are using their property for on an agricultural property or on that land. So there are currently provisions within the zoning bylaw that will allow us to have some enforcement authority there. That's outside of what the parking bylaw would direct us to do.
Okay,
Does
so
that answer your question?
In a roundabout way. So having said that, so if an agricultural property turns into boat storage or mobile home storage, we've got something to address that?
Mr. Bruder has a comment.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So that's one of the things too that we would address through zoning. I mean, at the end of the day, if we've got an agricultural property, it's, specifically in the green belt areas, well, the use has to remain agricultural.
Okay.
If we start seeing boat storage yards or RV storage yards, well, that's something that would be in contravention of what our zoning would be. For
Okay, because I don't want to shift the problem from a residential area to the ag area. So as long as we've got something to address that, then thank you very much.
Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, probably to Dan as well. I think Councillor Pachariva was going down the same road. The current bylaw does not address boats, RVs, trailers, this sort of thing. As far as motorized, it addresses motorized vehicles. Are we covered in that way? Are we all right, or how do we address those issues within the residential zones?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. So you're right, this specific bylaw doesn't speak to the type of vehicle, it just speaks to motorized vehicles. But in our zoning bylaw, we do have a provision, a parking provision, where one of any of those types of vehicles, RVs, trailers, boats, one is permitted in a residential zone currently. So we'd be covered under the zoning bylaw. However, through this bylaw that's before you right now, it would ultimately require those vehicles to be on the driveway or parking surface on the property. So it would remove them from yards and put them on the proper parking surface. But this bylaw won't specifically speak to the type, but our zoning bylaw will, and does.
And then, if I may, another question, the fines imposed, is that per visit to the property or per vehicle, or how is that calculated?
Yep, through you, Mr. Chairman, it's per vehicle. It's a parking ticket. It'd be like any vehicle that's parked on the road, multiple vehicles in no parking zone, each of them would receive a parking penalty notice. The same thing would happen on these properties. It's based on the vehicle's license plate, basically.
And then, if I could, one more
Sure.
question.
Yep, go ahead.
Commercial properties, do we have anything that addresses commercial properties within town? Like special events, like people parking all over boulevards, curbs, front yards? Do we have anything currently that addresses that? Or are we just focusing mainly on residential?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, this bylaw focuses mainly on residential, just based on the complaints we received, the research we've done, the municipality comparisons that we've run through. However, we do have another bylaw which we passed, I think less than a year ago now, the private property parking bylaw, which will allow a business owner to contact us to establish some kind of enforcement measure on their property. It would be at their request, though. It wouldn't be proactive through our enforcement measures. So there is something that is there to assist a commercial property, but it doesn't speak to that in this current bylaw, restricting them from parking off of their parking service that a residential zone would entail currently.
So I think the concern I would have is that with the commercial properties, what if it was the business owner themselves parking vehicles or trailers on their own backyard or property that's deemed to be green space?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, our bylaw that's before you, I agree, doesn't speak to that, but that's mainly because it wasn't a need at the time through anything that we've received through the community and complaints. So we were specifically addressing the need that was brought to us. My experience is that we don't see a lot of concern in those areas with commercial properties. That's not to say that they don't exist, we just don't see them very often. And this bylaw is intended to address some of the concerns that were brought to staff.
Okay, that's all, thank you.
Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair McPherson. Through to Mr. Smith. I had questions around the agricultural land as well. If someone was to put down gravel on some of their land and park extra vehicles or trailer or boat, there's nothing in the bylaw to prevent that? Is it the surface, like you've got to stay off grass? So if you put down gravel, is that okay?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, and maybe Matt might be able to jump in a little bit as well. It's similar to the response he provided earlier, where the use of the property is important, but there is also, I know specifically in residential zones with a percentage of a property that can be used as parking, but agricultural property, other than the specific use of the land, I mean, Matt may be able to clarify some of that zoning and planning aspect.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bruder, did you have any?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to follow up on that, that is true. It's a little bit different in agricultural areas. Typically, there's a little bit more flexibility for them. Maybe there's some vehicles or some equipment that they might need to park in a certain spot. So to answer your question, is it possible for them to maybe add a little section of gravel where another vehicle could be parked? Yes, but I mean, there is that point where all of a sudden, you know, if we have many, many vehicles parked there, it becomes an issue of, okay, well, this now appears to be some type of use that's not agricultural in nature, and that's when they would run into problems with our zoning bylaw. But I mean, an extra gravel space for another vehicle maybe would probably, that is not something that we would be regulating with this.
So just on that topic, so if you had a residential property, but you had a fairly large lot, you could extend, if you have an extra vehicle and you want to add, you don't want to put it on the lawn, so you can extend your driveway or your parking as long as you've got you're within your lot coverage. There shouldn't be an issue with that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Say if they had a really wide frontage or front yard, that, you know, percentage what we have in terms of what a driveway can cover
Right.
on the front yard, yeah, that would obviously change with the size of the property. That is true.
Because I know, I did hear a few comments on some people that are in the residential area, but they have a large lot, but they have a lot of vehicles. You know, if you've got 4 people in the house, 4 vehicles. So that was just something I wanted to ask. Just one other question, just around road allowances. I don't know who wants to respond. As far as vehicles parking on road allowances, would they be ticketed, or they will be told that they can't park on the road allowance? I don't know who
Through you,
wants to
Mr.
take that.
Chairman, yeah, so the road allowance piece of this bylaw was put in just, it's mostly there for safety purposes. It would be done, any enforcement that would be done on a road allowance would be done reactively, so through complaint, or if an officer determined there was a safety concern regarding sight lines, vehicles parking too close to corners, that were taking away from the safe driving habits of others, or vehicles that were partially on the side of the road or the road allowance and partially onto the driving surface that would impede traffic flow. It was more or less put in there just as a protection measure and not something that we'll be proactively seeking out vehicles doing. But we felt, and also that was a comment our legal review had, that it was important to include that piece. So that's why mostly that it's in there, but it would be a reactive piece unless it was an urgent safety concern.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to the Planning Department. It's actually an offshoot of Councillor Timmers. Do we have a formal process now where if a resident wants to expand their allowable parking, that they would apply for a permit or that rezoning, or is it just something they're going to do ad hoc?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so I think, you know, if they wanted to expand their driveway, let's say, but not really change their entrance in terms of their curb cut and whatnot, and they still met that, you know, that provision that they can't go over the certain percentage of their front yard being occupied by driveway, there wouldn't be any process specifically tied in with that. However, if they needed to exceed that, they would have to probably go through some type of minor variance application or something like that.
And along those same lines, if they were seeking that minor variance, would we give them any allowance on potential parking tickets just because they're in the process and it's pending? Or again, I know we don't want, if they do have legitimate cause and claim to expand, I'd hate to see them penalized just because of some of the red tape that might be involved to get to that point.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that's certainly something we would look at the end of the day. By law enforcement, I've been saying this over and over again, it's compliance-based. We usually look to enforcement as a last result. If they're going through the processes, if they're going through what they need to do it properly, to do it by the book, then we would probably afford them some flexibility, so long as they're not causing any type of safety concern or any other type of significant impact in that regard.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So my question is along those lines. So is there a plan, Dan, for a rollout of this bylaw? And I'm thinking about, this is going to be a change for some people, and to just start going and ticketing these people, similar to what we did in the downtown. Is there a plan for advising people that we now have a bylaw as opposed to ticketing first time out?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be using a stage process,
Okay.
similar to exactly what you mentioned. We also use something similar in some of our development areas that we were having some issues with vehicles parking and creating some safety issues. But
Great.
yeah, we'll be looking at staged approach. Yes.
Okay. So seeing no further questions, I have a motion that council approve the new parking on an unauthorized area of land bylaw outlined in Appendix A, an amendment to the Administrative Monetary Penalty System AMPS bylaw outlined in Appendix B. We will require a mover for the motion. Councillor Timmers, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. We are now considering item 8.3, PD-65-19, Heritage Designation Application for 4105 Fly Road, Camden. Are there any questions from council? Mary Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A number of items, and I'm not even sure if they can all be answered this evening, but on page 102 at the top, the paragraph begins, "A professional heritage consultant will be required and be retained by the town." My question is this new? And do we issue an RFP at the beginning of the term to establish who this individual is going to be? What is the process for that? That's my first question.
Okay, through to staff.
Sorry.
Kathleen?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, because we don't have anybody on staff that's actually has a professional designation in order to complete the heritage assessment, we do have to retain a consultant. So what we have is we have a consultant of record that we use for the heritage evaluations. And that is reviewed every so often. So we did actually, some time ago, look for some consultants to do that work for us. So every so often, we will go out to the market and renew that information.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, how long has it been, through you to Ms. Dale, how long would it have been, do you think, since we went out to the marketplace?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think it's been approximately 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, there's quite a lot of activity around the archaeological surveys. And my question is whether or not it's necessary for the application now to include any form of archaeological survey, even though there isn't any digging going on. Is it necessary to identify what a study area would be around the property in question?
Who would like to respond?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so what is being proposed is actually a heritage assessment of the building and the building. There isn't a requirement to do an archaeological assessment. So an archaeological assessment is something that in most cases is triggered by some type of planning application where you actually have to go out and you have to do excavations, and you may or may not find things through an archaeological assessment. So that's one type of study. What's done for heritage properties that are proposed to be designated or put on a list is actually a heritage assessment of the buildings.
Okay, okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have another question, but I'll
Go ahead.
ask it under, it's okay, I'll ask it under committee remarks because it's not specific enough to
Okay.
this. Thank you very much,
Very good.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Pachariva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you, and I had flagged the same paragraph on page 102. Just with respect to the professional heritage consultant, is it cost per project or is it cost per year? Like, do we have them on a retainer? Just curious to that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it is based on each evaluation.
Okay. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, through you, whose budget does that come out? Is that out of the Heritage Committee? Is that out of the Planning Department? Do we have a line item for that? Just wondering how we fund that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, as part of the Planning Department budget, there is a separate budget just for Heritage.
Okay.
So it's funded through the budget that's set up each year for Heritage.
Okay, good to know. And one more question, if you may, along the same lines of budgeting and things like that. So we've established a heritage restoration grant program. Wondering the uptake on that annually and where those funds come from to establish that, or have we established that and then we'll draw, or do we replenish that each year? So just curious as we're coming into budget.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the Heritage grants are funded the same way as the Community Improvement Plan grants are. So it's a budget item it's out of the financial incentive. So they're funded from that particular budget. And so far, we've only had one application.
Okay.
As I recall, I think this program was established by committee and council last year. So we've had one application that did receive a grant approval. In order to receive the grant approval, they also have to have the property designated. So I think you'll find that over time, as you get more and more properties designated, there probably will be more of an uptake in applications.
Okay. And one last question through you, Mr. Chairman. So there'll be an annual contribution to that budget line, correct? Or if the money is unspent, it will be held in a heritage restoration trust to be drawn down upon as these escalate?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, there is an annual budget, and if there are funds that are unused in the incentive fund, it's carried forward to the next year.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you.
Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair McPherson. I think a couple of my questions have already been covered off, but I just wanted to mention that this designation was requested by the owners of the property, which is a great thing. It makes our job a little easier as the Heritage Committee because they are definitely on board. It's something that they really would like to see happen. It's one of the oldest houses in Camden, and it's the Bucknell Barn actually was originally part of that property. So it's quite a unique home, and I'm just excited that we've got another possible designation, so thank you.
Very good. So, seeing no further discussion, we have a motion that council receive report PD-65-19 regarding the application for heritage designation of 4105 Fly Road in Camden for information and direct planning and development staff to proceed with the designation process for 4105 Fly Road as outlined in Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. We will require a mover for the motion. Councillor Rajima, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. We are now considering item 8.4 PD-66-19 Bill 108 Update and Provincial Policy Statement Review - Proposed Policies. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive report PD-66-19 on the Bill 108 Update and Provincial Policy Statement Review and direct staff to forward comment and advice preliminarily outlined in this report to the province for consideration, and direct staff to forward a copy of this report to the Niagara region. We will require a mover for the motion. Councillor Pachariva, waving his hand. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. It moves us to the confidential items of the agenda. There are none. Are there any staff remarks that we have not heard yet? There are none. Any committee remarks? Mary Easton.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Since we had items from the Heritage Committee on tonight, I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity to ask about, this is an inquiry about properties on the heritage list and what the status of those is, because I know that last term there was some attempts being made to refine that, to engage people at a much higher level. And then I have a question about the demolition of the property in the Jordan Village. So through you, and I'm not sure who
Do
would
we
be able to
have,
answer that.
is that a committee member response, or is that a staff response to the question of how many on the list?
Not how many, Mr. Chairman, but the status of what's happening with
Okay,
the list.
pardon me, status of the list. That may probably be more a committee response, would it not? No, staff is? Okay. Monica, who is not here.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, I'll do my best to answer the
Okay.
question
Very
in the
good.
absence of our Heritage staff person. As you know, we've just recently formulated a Heritage Committee. They've had a few meetings, so that is one of the items on their work plan, is to take that list and start getting them a little bit further along in the process. As well, there is going to be some additional consultation with the property owners as well.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Mr. Chairman, I'm not bringing the issue of the Jordan Village property up for any other reason except to say that I think it's, I know that there was information given to the committee about the potential age of it and some of the history around it. And it would be useful to know what deliberations took place at the committee level, because sometimes just because a building is very old, and I believe it was the original, not pub, but inn, if you will, it would be very interesting to know what some of the history was, but also what it was about the building that would have rendered it not suitable. Sometimes there's just too many changes. When it happened, it was quite shocking. Nobody had any idea, and yet the demolition permit had actually been let, I believe, the year prior. And all of a sudden, on a Saturday night, the building comes down. And I just put it on the table to see if the staff would examine what information could be brought forward from an educational perspective around, I think the demolition, I'm not questioning the demolition process, I'm questioning what kind of discussion went on at the committee. Is it available in some minutes? I haven't been able to determine that. It may never happen again, but I think that it would be interesting for committee to know how these policies are actually implemented. A lot of time has been spent by the Heritage Committee trying to define what these processes are in order to avoid concern when actions are taken. I don't know what you have in mind for that, Mr. Chairman.
Wow. Is there any comment? We do have a comment from Ms. Dale.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Can you, Kathleen, could you just pull that mic down a bit, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, in regards to that particular property, there actually was a heritage assessment prepared because in consultation with planning staff and the owner, we actually did ask them to hold off on the demolition of the property, and there was a heritage assessment done. I believe that was presented to the committee. I don't know which committee meeting that was at last year. But what it was determined is there weren't a lot of elements. I think if I recall correctly, the only thing that was of significance were actually some tin ceilings on the inside. So as far as I know, that information was provided to the Heritage Committee.
Okay, so how do we, I've been able to obtain this information, I'm interested. And the only reason I'm bringing it up at committee is because I think it's a better chance of me being able to get a copy of it. So I'm sorry to waste people's time, but I'm interested to know how that, you know, how that process worked and what the determination was.
Mr. Chairman, we can provide some follow-up information, such as a memo from Monica with some of the background.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Any other committee remarks? Seeing none, there being no further business, I call this meeting adjourned at 8:10.